Hello there, I'm going to show you about attribute blocks and interesting activities you can use using them. So this is an attribute set. I want to show you this without dropping it. In the attribute block set, all the shapes are 3 different colors, red, blue, and yellow, as well as 2 different thicknesses and 2 different sizes. So you have squares, circles, hexagons, triangles, and rectangles. So the first activity that you could use using attribute blocks is one that includes a handout called Guess My Rule. So here's the handout. On the handout, it shows where the students will create their own rule, and then a box over here where they will actually show the shapes that correspond with their rule, and then it also shows a box where they would show the shapes that don't correspond with their rule. So what their rules could be would be anything that the teacher expects them to do using the property of a shape. So for an example, my rule could be these are shapes with a total of 3 sides. So I would write that under my rule, and then over here in the circle I would find the attribute blocks that have a total of 3 sides, which would be these triangles. It would be any triangle. So if the teacher asks for that, you would use every triangle that you have. So you could put the red one, you would put the blue one, all of these to show that they all have a total of 3 sides. And then in this box down here that says draw a shape in the box that would not fit your rule. This would be any shape that does not correspond with your rule, showing that it does not have a total of 3 sides, which could be any of the remaining shapes, like circles or hexagons or even a square. So those would be the shapes that they would include in their box down here, whether they can draw it or they would use the attribute block to show that. Using this activity, students would be able to conceptually understand the differentiation of shapes. They would need to know the properties of the shapes, like their size, the amount of sides they have. And then using these blocks, they are able to actually see the different thicknesses and also different colors to figure out that this one might be blue and this one might be yellow, but they're the same. Here are 2 Kentucky teacher standards that associate with this activity. The next activity you could use with the attribute blocks is a shape sorting mat. So with the sorting mat, you would have different columns with different shapes, and then the student would use their attribute blocks to place onto the mat that correspond with that shape. So with the lower grades, you could use these, how they have the different shapes on there. So where you see this circle, they would need to use their attribute blocks to show all of these circles that go on there, and then they would sort them on there. You could also do different, you could write the names of the shape, and then they would have to be able to identify the shape by name without actually seeing it, and then place those shapes on the mat. A couple other mats that I have is you could do a shape mat, where the teacher would write the shape on the board like a square, and then they would all place them on there. Another one you could do, this would be kind of like for kindergarten really, would be color. Same thing, you could put blue on the board. They would need to have all of the blue shapes, attribute blocks to place on their mat. And the next one would be thickness. Overall could be big or little is what they would need to use. So conceptually, students would use this activity to be able to identify shapes, whether it be by what they look like, by their physical properties, or by their name. I feel like this would also be a really good interactive pre-assessment or post-assessment when you're talking about shapes. So what the students could do is, as a bell ringer, they could come into class, they would grab their sorting mat, and they would have their attribute blocks. The teacher would write on the board without seeing anything the name of a shape, and then so the third and final activity I chose with the attribute blocks is called Odd One Out. And this is more like a game. I feel like it would be really cool to have students partner up into groups and work on this together, or the teacher could work with the student individually to kind of see where the student's at when identifying these shapes. So how this works is one person or a teacher they would lay about 4 to 6 shapes. All of them will be the same except for one shape. And then the other student or the partner would need to figure out which shape is the odd one out based on whatever this teacher has recommended, either that be their shape properties like their size or the amount of sides it has or the color or even the thickness. So now what I'm going to show you is an example of how this game works. So as you can see, I have all of my attribute blocks set out. So what I would do is I would pick about 4 to 6 shapes, and then I'm going to leave one of them to be completely different from the rest. So first, the objective is to figure out what do I want them to be the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pick all the shapes to be quadrilaterals except for one of those shapes. So say I'll take this blue rectangle, and then I'm going to take this red rectangle. Then I'll take this red square, and then I'm going to put in this little yellow rectangle, and then I'm actually going to throw in a red triangle, okay? And then to actually kind of like trick the student or try to challenge them a little bit, what we're going to do is we're going to move around the order. So I want this one. I want the triangle. Nope, I want the triangle to be here. Okay, so now it's in a different order. So what I would do is the student would have to look at my row, and they would need to see which shape is not a quadrilateral. So the goal of this activity is that when a student looks at this, they should be able to identify that this is a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. This one has 4 sides. This one has 4 sides. This one has 4 sides, and then this one actually only has 3 sides. Therefore, this one is the odd one out, and it is a triangle, and a triangle is not a quadrilateral. Using the odd one out game, this is a good way for students to understand conceptually the differentiation of shapes. So when they are asked to find a quadrilateral and they have all of them are the same except for one shape, they are understanding that that one shape is not a quadrilateral, and they're expected to know that. So to follow, I'm going to show you a couple more standards that will go with this activity. Although most of these activities interlap with the different standards that they use, they're all very good activities to use with the attribute blocks to help students conceptually understand the different shapes, whether they are 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, also describing them as different colors, different sizes, and different thicknesses. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you use attribute blocks in your class.